there is a question there.
I would like some clarification, if it's possible, about what's going on in Belarus. Suddenly there seems to be exchanges of prisoners, political prisoners, and maybe they forewarned Poland about the drones, maybe they didn't, I don't know. Is this supposed to be some kind of a little movement towards they're getting tired of being dominated by Russia, or is it fake news?
I think Jakob is best placed.
Okay. My shot would be that it's fake news, because I think as long as Lukashenko is on the levers of power, he and Putin will manipulate the situation. To be honest, I don't think there'll be a change, of course, until there's change in Russia, Moscovia, or whatever we choose to call it. Unfortunately.
What do they get out of this
Yaroslav.
political exchange?
They give the
It's just a business.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just a business because Trump's made some sanction not so tight, and after that Lukashenko give people. So it's just business, nothing else. For Belarus, it's they want to do that because for them sanction very influential in bad way for their economy. But in long term, it's a possibility to Russia talking, guys, you do that with Belarus and world don't say nothing. So maybe you do something with our sanction, not from all Western country, but only to US. It's just business, and still Lukashenko, it's a puppet of Putin. Nothing happened in Belarus without Belarus. That honestly, without decision of Putin.
Yeah, and the whole Trump approach is important here, because he's loosening, the sanctions and making an approach towards Belarus. So he's becoming part of this whole game, but on the side of Belarus and Putin, unfortunately.
And also want to mention that we should understand that Belarus de facto on shoes with Russia. So there is no independent Belarus. And Russia don't occupy it de jure just to have more voices in United Nations, to play this game like a good bad policeman with sanctions and so on. So in some way, de facto on shoes Belarus have more rights even than occupied Ichkeria, where Kadyrov probably more independent from Moscow in some way even than Lukashenko from Putin. It's unfortunately it's true, and Belarus could become free only when this regime and this empire will collapse. So they are under control of Moscow.
And the huge threat is to legitimize air travel for Russians through Belarus, because it very much normalizes the years of war. If they can fly through Minsk to whatever destination sooner or later, the lifting of sanctions basically happens, and it's a horrible policy. Whereas on the contrary, sanctions should be strengthened on all accounts against Belarus and Russia. Unfortunately, the current US administration is doing the very opposite. We had a question here, and then we'll go to Johan.
Yeah, I think this is amazing to see, because I don't think we Danes know about this. And I was just wondering, who have decided where the borders should be?
Yeah, I will try to answer shortly.
The mapping experts.
Yeah, it's a collective project. Yeah, but it's also, we should understand, this is just visualization of a general concept. So we of course understand the border could be in some way another, and could be some other states. But the main two points is that all discussion about borders should be in a peaceful way, and it should, if they have a different opinion, use moderation. For example, the European Union or Turkey or Japan or something, they not to have the same like we have in Bosnia in 19th. And second part is very important that, like Yaroslav say, we try to build platform which make the sounds of capital nation louder. So it's not our project, it's just to provide them opportunity. And they have movements, different people from Ichkeria, Bashkortostan, Tatarstan, and they already signed an agreement that they will decide all problems about the border only peacefully, or only without moderation, and they agreed for 100% denuclearization of post-Russian spaces. So the mistakes of 1991, when 14th country don't have the nukes, only Russia, former metropolia have, shouldn't be repeated, and they agree for that. So I think it's also very important.
Thank you, Juraj.
Yeah, my name is Johannes, and I've been, I've been dragged in by Russia. I've been loving Russia, you might say. After that, unfortunately, I had 25 years in Ukraine to become decolonized, as Yaroslav know. But the problem that is presented here is quite critical, because it's every European power has been an empire almost. Yeah, even France after the Second World War had to fight the wars in Algeria, and even the war that became the Vietnam War for decades, to understand that it wasn't an empire anymore, even that it fared very bad in the Second World War, of course. Yeah? But we haven't seen the collapse of to be former colonial power, which is a huge nuclear power. So my question to you, Yaroslav, will be: how does an ideal Russian defeat in the current war look to you? I mean, how much does Russia has to be damaged, and how much can we actually damage it before it will press the nuclear button? I mean, people are afraid of this. Of course, we've been holding ourselves back all the time. So how does the Russian defeat look like to you?
Why Russia still exists? Because we afraid of nuclear power. Because when we analyzed economically, or when we analyzed due to civilization development, Russia can exist in general, because they very diverse but very totalitarian, and all diversity under control. And I do believe that it's impossible that Putin using nuclear weapon only one way. It will be last action, and not because of European country, because of next of him don't have any possibility to save all this territory. So it's very famous Russian fairy tale said that ancient Kaarsbo, it's like a bad god, yes, very, very weak, because his life in needle, and when you break it, he died. It's Russian do even worse when destroy, for example, Novokakhovska hydroelectric station. When you speak with ecologists, they said that consequences of this destroying was similar to not big but nuclear bomb. And what happened? We, as Ukraine, where it happened, we still alive, and we developed. So yes, Putin using this nightmare of European country, but as nightmare, he haven't do that, and we stress it on all platforms. Why? Because it will be his personal finish. As any Tsar, as any imperator, he won't do it, and still he will only show this button but never press that. It's our situation then begin a war after Putin in Russia elites. It depends, because a lot of them are really believe in propaganda, And due to that, the way how we can win, it will be a long story. It will be not one day we wake up and Putin not exist and Russia become. I do agree that Russia in existing borders can be a totally democracy, or it's not be a country with high level of human rights and so on. But when even some region receive rights to decide, it will be a more balanced situation, because yes, local authority even in Russia have higher level trust due to even Russian experts than Moscovian and our. Due to that, we must show our way. It's very hard, but now we have internet, we have global society, we have communication, and it's very important when we talk it even with whom Russia like to talk, because who knows who will be the next. So our first president, Leonid Kravchuk, was a communist leader, and yes, we still estimate differently his action, but he not stop independence. And due to that, we must to find with whom to work. And communication is the way, but not with communication with whom who pretend to be a representative. Why we create a parliamentary special committee for creating a policy due to indigenous people, captured people in Russia? Because we want to find our voice. We want to find partners with whom we can meet, we can sign agreement, what zero nuclear weapon, collaboration, human rights, freedom of speech, and we do believe it will happen, because for them it will be too necessary as to not return to captivity. And yes, France, Great Britain, Spain, all left their colony after the war. I do believe that Russia left their colony after the war, and let it be Russia-Ukrainian war, and it will be the last European empire, so-called federation. So, but yes, we must be, first of all, we must create a very strong unity, because China worked with Russia openly. Every night we under attack of Shaheds from Iran. Northern Korea soldiers fighting in Russia. Now Indian soldiers take part in so-called army preparing, so trainings. Evil easily create a unity. Why? Because it's about not values, it's about money, it's about business. Why to Trump it's more easier to speak with tyrants than with democratic leaders? Because it's about money, it's about interest, it's not about rights, it's not about values. And I do hope that we together can save this unity of values and involve in this unity Belarus, because yes, we have Belarus opposition, and this opposition now fighting in Ukrainian army. Chechens, the same. And yes, who ready to fight for their country, it will be who destroy even possibility to Russia thinking about nuclear weapon.
Yes, please, and I will be asking you maybe for a round of final comments, because we, I'm sorry, we have one more question. Maybe if you want to take the question, then try to incorporate the answer to it in your final comments.
It's like you asked, what was interesting to learn yesterday, and I think, well, it's fun for me to learn that Smolensk once had such a nice flag and actually European ties. And maybe it's also fun for me because I do have a cousin coming from that region, who I haven't actually spoken since almost the beginning of the war, and one of the reasons has been because she's never understood why freedom matters, because we've actually had this kind of conversation. So my question is, when independence for regions like Smolensk sounds utopian to me, what would it actually take for them to retain a European identity?
Maybe not European, because the majority of the regions would probably not be European, but an identity, please.
Yeah, I want to bring an example, and that is the Council of the Nordic Council of Ministers worked for many years with the Karelian area, the Murmansk, the northern regions, and I went to do some training some years ago in St. Petersburg, actually outside of St. Petersburg, with some of the people who were brought in on juvenile justice, on criminal justice, with judges and people, prison guards and social workers, and I was amazed, actually. I was really amazed about the level of understanding of criminal justice, especially juvenile justice, child rights, with all the people who had been they had been visiting Sweden, Finland, Norway through this exchange, and I was actually thinking that I didn't actually think that the Nordic Council of Ministers had made such an impact, but I really recognized that they had made an impact on a specific professional group in Karelia. And another time I went to Murmansk, and here I met the governor of Murmansk, and I met people, and at the same time there was actually elections for the Duma. And apparently only 35%, that was in 2017, or maybe 16, 17, or 18, anyway, only 35% of the population of this region decided to vote for the Duma elections. And it was taken as a very big, the fact that people were disenchanted. They were disenchanted by the politics already at that time of Putin. So my interpretation, I couldn't say for sure, but my interpretation was that this region, the Komi region, was already going towards the north, going towards Norway, going towards Finland, going towards Sweden, and that they had seen something better. There was actually, the borders were open in Norway, between Norway, and so people could travel back and forth. There was also open borders between Finland and Karelia, so there was a lot of exchanges. And I think these open borders, the targeted training, the exchanges that took place were very important in changing the mindset. And I would say the judges that I met, the social workers, they had genuine care for juveniles in prisons.
Could I a little bit add, because I totally agree, and we have from like Smolensk also people who represent Ingria or Ingermanlandia, this region which was a part of Swedish in the past. Then unfortunately we lose the Poltava battle and it's become the part of Russian Empire. But it will come back home to Europe, so it's a region of modern so-called Leningradsky Oblast and St. Petersburg. And they have a really strong movement for, it was first for autonomy, it called free autonomy, free Ingria, but after the full-scale invasion and becoming Moscow more and more crazy, they wanted to full independence. This movement, more than 30 years, have the story. It's becoming with the last day of 80s, and they also have a referendum in St. Petersburg in 1993 when 62% of people vote for the Republican status of St. Petersburg, the same like for example Tatarstan. But for what I'm saying, that people who from this area and from St. Petersburg region, they say that we for last 20 years much more often go for Helsinki or for Tallinn than for Moscow. So there I was looking for how state could live in normal way, without colony, without resources, and so on. And for example, even if there is people like in Kaliningrad, modern, or Königsberg, Karolia, which is Krolevets, it could call people who live now there, they not the people ingenious, it's people from different Russian, not Russian region who were go there after the Second World War. So they're not native people of East Prussia region. But even now for the Russia official statistic, we understand what is it, Russia official statistic. But even for that, they say that in this region, mostly people don't support Putin and war. Because probably if you are walking the streets where Kant was walking 200 years ago, and you see, of course, not a lot of buildings are the same because it was ruined by Second World War, but some freedom in the area. So even in this land, and the same situation with Smolensk and Pskov, which have the traditional of freedom. It was before Moscow conquered them in centuries, 16th century. They have some gray rules. And second point is also very important about the leadership. If they will have some nation future, some good leadership, for example, like it was with Johar Rudavi in Ichkeria, they could create their states, because none of other Caucasian state in their time, for example, Cherkessia or Dagestan, who had the same situation like in Ichkeria, but they don't have this because they don't have such leaders at that time. And I totally agree with Karelia, because even if you look for how much they have such called insurgent and terrorists in Karelia, it's for 1,000 people the highest points in Russia. So they have this not a lot, but little personality people who are ready to fight when the window of change will open.
Maybe just to explain what insurgent is, because I don't think it's like they have the highest number of foreign agents, like officially declared foreign agents by the Russian state or the Russian Ministry of Justice. So the Karelians, according to the Russian Ministry of Justice, have the highest level of foreign agents.
Yeah, and I'm sure among them a lot of organizations that study history or like memorial that would uncover the previous crimes against humanity and therefore would be forbidden.
They have Solovki stories. So
and they have Solovki, so this is, I think, the uncovering, just the uncovering of Solovki story would help many people change their minds. I would ask Juraj, Mette, and Jakub for your kind of concluding remarks, especially with the view of, there was a point raised in terms of, can former empires in Europe imagine the demise of the Russian Empire finally, and how to bring this, closer and faster, and nudge this Russian disintegration so that it becomes less of a threat to others.
The first step is vigorous support to Ukraine.
And the defeat, yes.
Military and defeat Russia. And then on kind of what's next, practical level, working with the local elites, both elites of the oppressed nations, starting to cultivate a relationship with them, engage into dialogue, invite them, gather them together and so on, but also with the local elites in Russia proper or majority Russian regions. For instance, there are 12 cities in Russia that have over 1 million inhabitants. I suspect that each such city has some level of local elites, certain types of, they have university, they have local administrative people, they have local doctors, all kinds of local elites. And identify them, work them, maybe using the pre-existing sister city arrangements which exist between European cities and some of these cities. Like there are 3 million cities, 3 cities with million and more people in Siberia, 2 are in Urals and 7 are in European part of Russia. That's another opportunity. You discuss this issue of the small ethnic group nations. According to the last census, there are 194 different ethnic groups living in Russia. Around 120, 140 of them are the original people of that territory, but only 40 of them have, according census, more than 400,000 people. So, 150 are very small, some of them counting few hundred people or few thousand people. And obviously these very small populations do not have a realistic chance for their own statehood. So there are different types of approach is needed in dealing with this. And for instance, Arctic Council was mentioned because many of those live in the northern regions, Arctic regions or sub-Arctic regions. That might be an interesting platform to develop cooperation with this or contacts with this smaller. But with these bigger populations, we need to focus on it. And very last moment, I lived through the collapse of Czechoslovakia. Marriage between Czechs and Slovaks was very good marriage. We did not have any, we remained the best friends. Czechs and Slovaks loved each other 30 years after, or more than 30 years after. Slovak children understand Czech language, Czech children understand Slovak language 30 years after, or young people. The split was total nonsense from economic and many other perspectives. Nevertheless, it happened. And it happened for one important single reason: aspirations of local elites in Bratislava. I am benefactor of the split of Czechoslovakia. I always resisted it because culturally I feel like Czechoslovak, but I'm ethnically Slovak and I'm benefactor of the split of Czechoslovakia. But honestly, Slovaks did not gain anything out of it, except that some part of elites gained advantages. And the same dynamic will work in in Russia once this oppressive apparatus is weakened and eventually disappears. Then these local aspirations will emerge, and some of them will be mafia types, and some of them will be more kind of political or economic types. Nevertheless, they will inevitably emerge. And we will need to work with those people.
Thank you. Mette and Jakob, and I think we will conclude, and if you prefer to stay over and discuss over coffee and tea, please. But Mette?
We have a lot of wine left.
The last point you made is very interesting, and I think it's a very good insight to carry along concerning how to prepare ourselves for the possible collapse of Russia. That local elites will immediately appear and seize the moment. I should actually like to go back to one of the first topics you raised about how to define Russian colonialism, because the definition of the term colonialism is important in order to understand why the fact of Russian colonialism and imperialism has been so invisible for, people in the global south. When they speak about colonialism, what they have in mind is what Britain and France did and Portugal did and Spain and so on. But the fact of Russian and Soviet colonialism is invisible, and it's due to the, so to say, official United Nations definition of colonialism, that there has to be a saltwater ocean between the colonial great power and the colonial subjects. And this means that the Russian and Soviet colonial practice suddenly is out-defined, and in reality it has always been there, but it has very much been a 20th century colonialism, which is for this reason also forgotten. So it's here until